Welcome back. You're watching Overdrive. The big bike market in India has largely been dominated by Harley-Davidson, and the iconic American brand is in no mood to give up its strongholds. So it's decided to go deep and cheap. Shimi gets his hands on the India-made Street 750 to find out if Harley has got its India strategy right. Take a look.
We brought you the global reveal of this motorcycle from Milan. We brought you the price, 4.1 lakh rupees, ex-showroom Delhi from this year's Auto Expo. And now it's time to ride Harley-Davidson's first Indian-made Harley, the Street 750.
The motorcycle was conceived as a vehicle for the urban youth, and that defined a number of aspects of the Street 750. For example, it had to be liquid cooled because engine temperatures in urban areas can get very high when you're stuck in traffic. It had to be tall to clear potholes and speed breakers, and so on. The result is a slim, sleek, low-slung motorcycle that looks like a Harley from the side and the front, though a compact one with a radiator.
But the criticism of the Street 750 has been that the rear end of the motorcycle doesn't really look powerful. Well, if you look at the overall motorcycle, it's not supposed to look powerful. It's supposed to look friendly and unintimidating, and that it does. So it looks like a genuine Harley-Davidson motorcycle. It's smaller, it's lower, it's thinner overall, but it is a Harley-Davidson. And that rear end, well, honestly, when you're riding the bike, you can't see it.
The other thing you cannot see is anything in the mirrors. If you're 5'7" or taller, the stock mirrors will basically show you your shoulders. But the Street 750 isn't a Harley you have to keep looking over your shoulder on. And that's because it's quick and it's fast. We saw as much as 180 km per hour with the speedo maxed out on a deserted road. And it gets to about 145 to 150 km per hour without stress.
As you know, this engine, the Revolution X, is Harley's first new engine in absolutely ages, and I know that you're going to read that it doesn't sound like a traditional Harley-Davidson at all. And the problem is that that's not actually true. It does actually sound like a Harley-Davidson. It sounds like a V-Rod. So when you're at middling revs and you get on the throttle, it sounds exactly like a V-Rod does, obviously on a smaller scale with less bass, and with a Screaming Eagle set of pipes or something, this is going to sound actually rather nice. More importantly, it's a really likable engine. It's quite revvy. Redline is above 8,000 RPM. It picks up pace very, very cleanly. There's lots of torque at all points of time. And it's a really rideable engine. Leave it in 5th or 6th gear through city traffic. Just roll on the gas. It's a very, very nice bike to ride through the city. So when you read that this engine doesn't actually sound like the Harley-Davidson engine, it doesn't. It sounds like a Harley-Davidson engine, the V-Rod engine.
And if you think about it, there are a lot of similarities between this and the V-Rod's engine. They're both liquid cooled, they're both 60-degree over square V-twins, and of course, one was developed with help from Porsche, and the Revolution X had AVL play a role in it. The chassis is also new. It features Indian-made right-side up forks up front, alloy wheels, and a tubular cradle frame that holds it all together. At the rear is a twin-shock setup. Harley say all told the Street is light and it sits on a wheelbase longer than, well, for example, the Super Low. The design thought behind this was to make the motorcycle agile in terms of being able to change direction quickly so that navigating urban traffic would be easy. And since urban areas all over the world are famous for the state of their roads, it had to be comfortable as well.
You don't really associate Harley-Davidson with great handling motorcycles. They are good handlers in terms of the fact that they're stable, but when you start trying to push the pace, immediately stuff starts touching down, and at that point you know you can't go any harder. But the Street 750 isn't actually like that. This new frame is extremely stable, the wheelbase is pretty long, but it's not really raked out, so it's not very slow to turn in. But more importantly, because Harley-Davidson raised the ground clearance because it was going to be ridden in a country like ours where the roads are a little bit unpredictable, you've suddenly got cornering clearance, which means you can actually lean this thing pretty hard over into a corner before things touch down. And since the pegs are all rubber, you can actually confidently get the pegs into the tarmac, rubbing away, no crisis, nothing else grinds down. It's actually a very, very good handler. It's actually something you can take into a corner really hard and enjoy the pace.
Cornering on great roads, it's all fine and dandy, but what happens when eventually, inevitably, you come upon bad roads?
The ride quality of the typical Harley-Davidson goes something like this. There is a sense of massive weight and heavy wheels, and together that sort of damps out and bashes the road into submission. But the Street 750 isn't like that. Well, for starters, it's about 42 kilos lighter than the Sportster. But on the other hand, when you start riding it, the first impression you get is that this is a pretty stiff motorcycle. And then you realize 10 minutes in that actually it's not as stiff as you think, and it is actually going through the potholes pretty nicely. 20 minutes in, you realize it's actually a pretty comfortable motorcycle. And pretty comfortable in the sense of a normal motorcycle might be, with suspension that absorbs things. What is really impressive is when you come into the corner, you went pretty quickly and you find a bump in the middle of the corner. Normally a Harley Davidson will either go through the bump using the weight to smash it down, or it will get a little bit upset. This thing, nothing, it just goes flat through the bump. And I think that's a very, very impressive way to do suspension on any motorcycle, including this one.
Harley-Davidson opened bookings for the Street after the Auto Expo and aims to start delivering them by the end of May 2014. The price, Rs 4.1 lakhs ex-showroom Delhi, was a surprise, and at that price, the Street 750 I think should be value for money. It isn't perfect though. There are issues like the mirrors, the seat bar pegs to triangle won't suit taller riders, and Harley could actually stand to improve the finish levels. I also don't like the lack of feel from the brakes and the fact that ABS isn't even an option. But are these really deal breakers?
As you can tell, I'm quite happy with the Street 750. In many ways, it's exactly what a Harley Davidson needs to be. It sounds like one, it more or less goes like one, and it certainly looks like a Harley Davidson. On the other hand, it surprises you with quite a few features. For example, the ride quality is actually surprisingly comfortable. The handling is actually very, very stable, and there's a lot of cornering clearance. So when you go into a corner, it doesn't deck out everything immediately. And all that at the price of 4.1 lakh rupees ex-showroom Delhi. I think if you're trying to get into the larger displacement cruiser space, you can't do better than that on that kind of a budget.